The new Diluvian trial is a very interesting new game mode, or I wouldn't say game mode, new mechanic or thing you can do similar to Hell mode, and I've come to enjoy it quite a bit. I feel like, however, it does have some problems, but they're probably going to be fleshed out pretty soon. Let's talk about more of like how it is right now. So on the first initial release, I think everyone can agree it was way too hard. Under-attuned mobs everywhere, constantly, infinite stuns, you're not winning. Even on like max players, you'd have to be very coordinated. I kind of like that. I think that was kind of interesting, but now they balanced it out a bit, made it slightly easier. So now waves like 48 and 49, not 48. Wave 48 and wave 50 are now much easier compared to what they used to be. They don't have the absurd amount of thunder-attuned mobs like they did before, so you don't get like infinite stun. And I feel like that's much better. It's not as hard anymore, but they also decrease the loot respectively because of it. I was doing it yesterday, and it was so much easier than it was the first day because of the reduced amount of thunder mobs. Like, it's very possible now. You can do it with 4 players, probably 3. You might even be able to do it solo if you have the perfect build for it. I know that probably the man Zuko himself is probably going to cook up something about that as we speak, because I was doing it with him yesterday and he was talking about it. So we'll probably see something from him. You guys should check it out. But otherwise, I really recommend doing it in a group, because it is still quite difficult, as he did wipe himself yesterday when we were doing it. But as of right now, I actually feel like it's kind of worth just doing like the early waves just over and over again, even if you're a max build. Because you do actually get a decent amount of loot. Like, you get pretty high tier depths loot still. Like 3 stars pretty regularly, an Idol of Yun Shul, quite clearly shown in one of the clips here. And then also just general good loot. Like, it's not bad, but it's not great either. It's like better, it's like slightly better than Hell mode, and you can do it over and over and over again. You can clear it out, like the 5 initial waves, in less than a minute. If you're power 20, so you start at wave 11. So then you just do those 5 waves, start again, you get the loot, and you just go over and over again. And that way you're getting this really good loot for how easy and fast it is, and it actually becomes kind of worth it. But as for the latter waves, the difficulty spikes so high, but the loot spike does not quite follow it. So I feel like the loot has to be increased somewhat. I also feel like, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like the enchant stones might need to be removed. Hero blades probably also need to be removed, because let's be honest, if you're doing this, you don't need enchant stones nor hero blades from this, because hero blades are easy to do just from the event during the winter, or from the blizzard nights, and with enchant stones you can just do Deep Shore Fossil, or you could do floor 2 and get a bunch of medallions and just get a bunch that way. It's gonna be so much easier that way, instead of getting these rewards which are just kind of mid, even if they are mythic cleared purples. It's still just kind of mid and not worth how difficult this trial is. I also feel like if you want to make the trial more enticing, even if the schematic is really enticing itself, and now that they've dropped the loot, it's not as enticing because you're not going to get crypt blades as often. I did get a crypt blade last night, but that was the only like crypt blade curve, like that was like the only legendary weapon we got during 2 runs. It was not worth it. I didn't even get it during the latter waves. I got it during the early waves as well. It's like, still, it just proves the point that the early waves are probably just going to be better than the latter waves just for farming alone. And it's faster anyways. So I feel like the latter waves really need something else more enticing. So I feel like something like the Bloodforged Crown, have an increased drop rate there. I know it wouldn't make much sense, but then again, why the hell are the attunement trainers there? That doesn't make sense either. So add the Bloodforged Crown, that would make it more common there. And since you have to be a full group for it still, most likely for most players, because most players realistically aren't going to be good enough to do it solo or in lower groups. most players are going to have to do it in full group still, and even then we'll probably struggle. So as for that, I feel like Bloodforged Crown would be a good choice. I also feel like Pathfinder Elites should be a bit more common there as well, because especially higher starred Pathfinder Elites. Because Pathfinder Elites actually have the highest BVM potential out of anything, but they're ludicrously hard to farm for. So if you actually wanted something enticing for PvE players as well, because let's be honest, PvE players are only really doing it for the schematic, not really for much of the loot, because PvE players don't really care much for legendary weapons except for trading it, so they can get more DVM stuff, so they can get even stronger. So if you wanted something for PvE players, you could add in higher starred Pathfinders there, because they can have the highest amount of BVM, and that would elevate how many PvE players, and it would be so much more enticing that way, because you have a reliable way of farming high starred Pathfinders, which you don't do, because Hell modes, you're mostly going to get 0 stars. I don't think I've gotten a 3-star once, and it wasn't even that good. And I've done a lot of Hell modes, a lot of them, especially if you've been around on this channel for a while, you would know that I've done a lot. Basically, the underlying problem with the trial right now is that the rewards don't climb like the difficulty does, so the easier levels have rewards which are worth it, but then the latter levels don't really have rewards which are as worth it. And you should increase the amount of enticingness you can do to PvE players, because that's what this is aimed for. You should give them access to some of the rarer stuff and drip, such as the Bloodforged Crown and the Pathfinder Elite, which are higher starred than usual. Probably tweak the end game loot a bit by getting rid of the hero blades and enchant stones, because realistically at that point in time, none of the players are really going to be hunting for those, and they're pretty easy to get on their respective events. So it's not really something that you should get from the Diluvian trial, which is very difficult compared to everything else in the game. But with all of this out of the way, I do have some bigger videos coming up, some much more well-edited ones, similar to my Dawnwalker one, tackling the bosses and mini-bosses, so stay tuned for that. If you guys like the video, please subscribe, and you will be able to keep up to date when I post those videos. Otherwise, I'll just have to see you guys in the next one. Peace!